My name is Amy Walsh, and I'm 29 years old. If you asked me 6 months ago where I'd be today, I wouldn't have said this. Back in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by peeling posters of indie bands I stopped listening to a decade ago, sleeping in a twin bed that creaks when I exhale too loudly. I came back home because I thought I needed to heal. But the truth? Sometimes we run toward the very fire we should have fled long ago. After I left him, after 6 years of building a life, only to find out I was the only one laying bricks, I thought being near family would help. I told myself I needed familiarity, warmth, quiet. I should have known better. My mother greeted me with the same high-pitched voice she's always used when people are watching, a smile that never reaches her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you look thin. Sit. I'll make tea." And then there was Kyle, my younger brother, my mother's sun and moon. The eternal golden boy who, at 26, still acts like a teenager with a credit card and no consequences. The night I moved in, he didn't even look up from his phone. Just tossed a lazy smirk my way and said, "Welcome back to the madhouse." I remember sitting in the kitchen that night, staring at the pale green tiles I used to count when I was grounded. I ran my fingers over the chipped corner of the counter, the same spot Mom slammed a pan when she found out I didn't get into Stanford. Funny how you can spend your whole life trying to make someone proud, only to realize they were never watching you, they were watching someone else. I unpacked slowly that week. Every drawer I opened was a time capsule. Old journals. A broken bracelet from when Kyle pushed me into the pool on my 15th birthday. Photos of me and him before we grew into strangers. But here's the thing no one tells you. Healing isn't peaceful. It's not candles and yoga and soft playlists. Sometimes, healing feels like grief. Like tearing down a wall only to find another behind it. Like waking up from a nightmare into a memory that hurts more than the dream did. And still, I stayed. There was a night, maybe a week in, where I sat on the back porch with a mug of cold chamomile tea, watching the wind push against the fence. I could hear Kyle's music blasting through his bedroom window, some bass-heavy rap he probably didn't understand. I closed my eyes and whispered, "This is just a phase. I'll get through it." But even as I said it, I felt it in my bones. This house wasn't where I would heal. It was where the cracks would finally split open. Because the thing about memories is, they don't let go just because you ask them to. They linger. They whisper. They pull you back when you're trying to move forward. And somewhere between the quiet sobs into my pillow and the sound of my mother laughing too loudly at Kyle's jokes, I started to remember things I'd long buried. Moments where I'd been overlooked. Dismissed. Used. Not by strangers, but by blood. And this? This was just the beginning. There's a strange silence in a house you grew up in. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that wraps around your ribs and squeezes. Like the walls remember too much. Like they know who you used to be, and they're waiting to drag you back there. It had been nearly 2 weeks since I moved back into my childhood home. My therapist had suggested I take a break, reconnect with your foundation. But foundations crack. And this one was already shaking. I'd been freelancing again, design work for small businesses, rebuilding my portfolio after my breakup shattered everything. It felt good at first. Purposeful. But there was always this hum of dread. Like I was missing something. Like someone was watching me make progress and disapproving silently. Turns out, they were. It started with a knock. Not my mother's knock. Hers was always a burst of sound followed by a command. No, this was Kyle. Knuckles brushing the wood softly, as if asking permission. He stood in my doorway in a hoodie 2 sizes too big and that old confident grin he used to use in high school when he wanted to borrow my car. "Aim. You got a minute?" We hadn't had a real conversation since I moved in. We shared glances across the dinner table, half smiles, and the occasional sarcastic, "nice socks." But this? This felt rehearsed. He scratched the back of his neck. "I've been in a bit of a bind. Here it comes," I thought. He launched into a story about his job, or rather, the job he used to have. Something about management changing, an unfair layoff, and how he was just between opportunities. I nodded. Said nothing. Then came the punchline. "I just need help covering my mortgage this month." Just 1 month. "Things you'll bounce back. I swear." I didn't answer right away. Instead, my mind drifted to the summer when I was 16 and wanted to go to an art camp. Mom said no, said it was too expensive. That same week, she bought Kyle a brand new gaming console. Said he'd had a hard semester. The winter when I had the flu and Mom still made me cook dinner for his birthday. Because he deserves to celebrate. To the way love in this family always felt. Conditional. But still, I wanted to say yes. Not for him. Not even for Mom. For the part of me that still wanted to be good, still believed that being the responsible one would eventually be enough. I'll help this once, I said quietly. How much? 1,500, he said, too quickly. I blinked. He added, I'll pay you back. Just a short loan. I sent it that night. Not because I believed him, but because part of me still wanted to belong to this family. Still hoped that love could be earned if I gave enough of myself. After the transfer, I sat in the dark and stared at the ceiling. I remembered how my ex used to say, you carry the weight of everyone around you. Don't you ever get tired? I did. I still do. The next morning, Mom made pancakes. She only ever did that when something went her way. She didn't say thank you. She just said, you're a good sister, Amy. Kyle's lucky. I smiled, hollow. Because I knew then what I hadn't been willing to admit the night before, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a debt they never planned to repay. People talk about rock bottom like it's a loud crash. Like one moment you're standing, and the next, you're buried under rubble. But sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, rock bottom feels like a slow leak, the kind you don't notice until everything's damp and cold and you can't remember the last time you were dry. That's how it felt, 2 weeks after I sent Kyle that first $1,500. Nothing exploded. Nothing shattered. But something inside me dimmed. I kept telling myself it was fine. He's your brother. It was just a one-time thing. You're helping. That's what family does. And yet, every time I opened my banking app and saw the number a little lower, I felt something in my chest tighten. Not because of the money. I'd survived on less before, but because of the silence that followed it. No thank you. No check-in. Just absence. Like the favor had been expected. Mom started treating me differently, too. Not kinder, not warmer. Just more entitled. She started leaving hints. A stack of bills left out on the kitchen counter. Groceries that were suddenly my responsibility. Snide remarks when I spent money on anything for myself. Oh, new shoes? I guess your brother's mortgage isn't as important as I thought. I laughed at first. Because what else do you do when the people who are supposed to love you start keeping score? But the truth was, I was unraveling. Nights became heavier. Memories became louder. I would lie in bed and remember being 11 years old, sitting on the stairs while Mom screamed at Dad about money. How Kyle was always upstairs, door shut, video game blaring. How I was always the one cleaning up after the shouting. Even then, I was the fixer. The in-between. The peacekeeper. And I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, maybe they'd love me in a way that didn't feel so hard. There was a moment that week, just a small one, but it stayed with me. I was folding laundry in the living room when Kyle walked in. He grabbed a soda from the fridge, flopped onto the couch, and scrolled his phone like I didn't exist. I tried. I asked about job interviews, sent him listings, suggested connections. He shrugged it all off. Then, as he walked out, he said casually, "Oh, by the way, rent's due again soon. You got me, right? Not can you help me? Not thank you for last time. Just you got me, like it was understood now. Like I'd signed some invisible contract the moment I pressed send on that first transfer." I smiled, but my stomach twisted. My voice caught in my throat, and I said nothing. Because I didn't know how to say, "I'm still bleeding from the last cut. And you're already reaching for the knife again." That night, I called my best friend, Lena. I hadn't told her the full story yet, just fragments. But when I finally let it all spill, she went quiet. Then she asked the one question I'd been too afraid to ask myself. "Amy, do you think they'd still love you if you stopped giving?" I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. And the truth hurt more than I was ready for. There are two kinds of silence in a family. The first is gentle, the kind that wraps around you after a long day, wordless but comforting. The second? The second is sharp. It cuts between sentences, thickens the air, turns everything brittle. That was the kind of silence I was living in now. I was folding towels when Mom walked in with that strange brightness in her voice, the kind she used when she was about to ask for something but didn't want it to sound like asking. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, too casually. "Kyle's looking into getting a car. You know, something reliable. He's been job hunting so much, it only makes sense." I nodded absently. Then she said the word that changed everything. "He wants you to co-sign." I didn't even look up at first. Surely I'd heard wrong. "Sorry?" I asked, placing the towel down. Her eyes sparkled with that familiar condescension, like I was being silly for needing clarification. "Kyle found a good deal. He just needs someone with a solid credit history. It's not like you'll have to pay anything." My hands started shaking, but I smiled. "It's a reflex. Like a bruise that flinches when you press it." "I'm not comfortable with that," I said, softly. Mom tilted her head. "Why not?" I wanted to scream. "Instead," I said, "because if he doesn't pay, I'll be responsible." She scoffed. "He's your brother, Amy. You act like he's some stranger." That was the moment. Right there. The line that had always been drawn, that invisible boundary between Kyle and me, started glowing red. Because I was the stranger. The backup plan. The safety net they never had to thank. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. Same spot. Same cracks. I kept hearing their voices on a loop. "It's not like you'll have to pay anything. You're his sister. You act like he's some stranger." I wasn't sure what hurt more, the manipulation, or the fact that for a moment, a small, buried part of me considered saying yes. Because somewhere, deep in the oldest part of me, I still believed that if I just gave a little more, bent a little further, they'd finally see me as enough. In the morning, Kyle didn't speak to me. Mom slammed cabinets louder than usual. Passive aggression in domestic tones. I poured my coffee in silence and left the house. On the way to a client meeting, I kept thinking about when we were kids, how Kyle used to get in trouble at school, and I'd be the one to sit next to him on the stairs, reading him stories while Mom yelled at teachers on the phone. Even then, I was doing emotional labor no one thanked me for. Even then, I was the bridge no one noticed until they tried to cross it, and found it collapsing under their weight. When I got home that evening, there was a post-it note on my door. Kyle's handwriting. "You're seriously gonna ruin this for me?" No signature. No punctuation. Just accusation. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers itched to crumple it. But I folded it neatly instead, slid it into my journal like a pressed flower. Because one day, I knew I'd need to remember that moment. The moment I stopped feeling like a daughter or a sister, and started feeling like a resource. And still, I didn't leave. Not yet. Because healing is messy. Because pain wears the faces we love most. Because sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones that feel familiar. Some betrayals come with slammed doors, screaming, shattered glass. Others arrive softly, in silence, in legal envelopes. It started with a text from my mother. "Come downstairs. We need to talk." No emojis. No warmth. Just 5 cold words that landed like a stone in my stomach. I walked into the kitchen, expecting another guilt trip about Kyle, another lecture about how family sticks together. What I got instead was worse. She stood there, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Kyle leaned against the counter, sipping orange juice like this was just another Wednesday morning. There was a man at the table. Mid-40s. Suit. Briefcase. My pulse quickened. "Amy," Mom said tightly, "this is David. He's here to help us resolve something important." I blinked. Help us? What? David stood, offering a hand I didn't take. "I'm a mediator," he said. "Your mother and brother have some concerns regarding a financial agreement you made with them. They're hoping we can come to a peaceful resolution before legal action becomes necessary." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. What financial agreement? David glanced at a folder. "It states here you agreed to cover Kyle's mortgage for 12 months. My heart dropped. "No," I whispered. "That's not true. I helped one time. There was no agreement." Mom stepped forward, voice sharp. "We all remember you saying it. You even texted about helping him get back on his feet." My knees buckled slightly. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. I said 1 month. Not 12. You know that. But she didn't flinch. Kyle wouldn't even look at me. It was like watching a slow-motion crash, except the car was me and I hadn't even seen the road turn. I looked at my mother, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman who kissed my scraped knees or read me bedtime stories. I saw someone else. Someone willing to rewrite the truth if it suited her better. Someone who believed she was owed something, even if it meant tearing her own daughter apart to get it. I'm not signing anything, I said quietly. And if you try to take this further, I'll get a lawyer. David nodded. Professional. Of course. You're entitled to counsel. Carl finally spoke then, soft and smug. I just didn't expect you to be so selfish. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands shaking, breath shallow. I kept replaying the moment in the kitchen. The calmness in my mother's voice. The indifference in Kyle's eyes. The sick familiarity of being painted as the villain, even after doing everything right. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, a numbness settled into my bones, like grief, but colder. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I had been disposable all along. A wallet with a heartbeat. A fallback plan wearing kindness like armor. I opened my phone, scrolled to the old texts. One from Mom, months ago. You're our rock, Amy. We'd fall apart without you. Funny. Now that I'd stopped holding them up, they were ready to crush me for it. And still, this is the part that hurts to admit, a piece of me wanted to fix it. Wanted to ask, what did I do wrong? How can I make it better? Even when the wound was open. Even when they were the ones holding the knife. Because healing isn't linear. Because sometimes we ache for the people who broke us. Because we confuse pain with love when we've only ever known them together. I never thought I'd need a lawyer to protect me from my own mother. But that's where I found myself. 3 days after the kitchen ambush. 3 sleepless nights. 2 panic attacks. And 1 cold hard realization. Love without respect is just control in disguise. His name was Mark Henley. A quiet, precise man with soft eyes and a sharp mind. He reviewed the folder I'd brought him. Printouts of texts, bank statements, a few handwritten notes from Mom that I'd saved from the early days, back when love still looked like cursive on a yellow sticky note. When I told him the full story, he sat back and folded his hands. This isn't just a misunderstanding, he said calmly. It's a setup. I blinked. He nodded toward the emails Kyle had sent me. Have you noticed the tone change here? He said, pointing. This one sounds like you promised long-term support. But the language is vague. And this one, well, I'd bet money it didn't come from you. The room blurred. What are you saying? I'm saying, he said gently, I believe they may have forged part of this communication trail. Or altered it. I felt the floor tilt. Not just because of the potential forgery, but because it made sense. It explained the certainty in Mom's voice. The calm in Kyle's. They weren't guessing I'd cave. They were sure I'd lose, because they thought they'd already rigged the story. I left Mark's office with trembling hands and a numb face. Outside, the sky was gray and low, like even the clouds were too tired to hold themselves up. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching the windshield fog with my breath. My phone buzzed with a message from Lena. How are you holding up? Don't disappear on me. I stared at her words. Disappearing sounded nice. But that's what I'd been doing for years, hadn't I? Disappearing into being the good daughter. The quiet sister. The helper. The peacekeeper. The fool. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face. Not the one from my childhood memories, laughing in the kitchen, braiding my hair, singing off-key in the car. No. I saw the face from the kitchen table. The one that looked at me like I was a threat. Like I was no longer family, but a liability. And yet, I missed her. Even in my anger. Even in my fear. I missed the version of her I had created in my head. The version that had never really existed, but had always been real enough to keep me hoping. That's the cruelest part of trauma. We don't just mourn what we lost. We mourn what we thought we had. The next day, Mark called with more news. I've reviewed the headers from that email, he said. It's been altered. Timestamp inconsistencies. We can present this. My stomach turned. They committed fraud? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Yes, he said. And if we push this in court, it could backfire on them, hard. I hung up and stared at the floor for a long time. The truth had always been a moving target in this family, bent and shaped until it fit whatever narrative Mom needed that day. But now the truth was a knife, and for the first time, I was learning to hold it by the handle, not the blade. Still, the ache remained. The ache of love twisted into obligation. The ache of memories still soft in the corners of my mind. The ache of knowing that I was no longer fighting to save a relationship, but to survive IT and therapy. I revisited my past, how I had been the caretaker after Dad's death, how Mom had favored Kyle, and how I had been taught to sacrifice myself for their happiness. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it was a lifetime in the making. The courtroom battle was only one painful chapter in a story of years. The judge ruled in my favor due to lack of evidence and the forged documents. My mother's credibility was shredded. Kyle screamed at me in the courthouse parking lot, blaming me for destroying them. But I was free. Legally, at least. Emotionally, I was still broken. The months after were the hardest. I battled depression and loneliness, mourning the family I never truly had. I wrote a letter to Mom, raw and honest, that I never sent. I learned that sometimes healing means letting go of who you wish your family was, and loving yourself enough to walk away. I moved out, surrounded myself with friends who became my chosen family, and started a blog sharing my story, helping others set boundaries with toxic family members. I learned that love isn't obligation. It's respect, kindness, and trust. And most importantly, I learned to love myself. I used to think being the good daughter meant giving everything until I had nothing left. Now I know that true strength is saying no, protecting your heart, and choosing the people who truly see your worth.